Now, the Wonnangatta Valley is located deep in the Victorian High Country. It was once a thriving cattle station, and in 1918, station manager James Barclay was found shot in the back and buried in the banks of the Conglomerate Creek, just below the homestead here. On the 22nd of January 1918, Harry Smith arrived at the station to deliver the mail. He found Barclay and Bamford absent, although the words "home tonight" were chalked across the kitchen door. Smith stayed one night, but no one came home, so he returned to Eagle Vale on the 23rd of January 1918. Harry Smith returned to Wonnangatta homestead late in the afternoon about 3 weeks later, on 14th of February 1918. The homestead was still deserted, and the mail still sitting where he'd previously left it on the kitchen table. Smith was shocked to find Barclay's favourite dog, Baron, starving and neglected. He briefly searched the area, stayed the night at the homestead, and left for Dargo the next day to raise the alarm. Following this, a telegraph was sent to one of the station owners, Arthur Phillips of Mansfield. So Keith, once the telegraph was sent into Mansfield, what happened after that?
Arthur Phillips got a fellow that worked for him, Jack Jebb, and a couple of days after the telegram arrived, it took him time to get his stuff together. They came into Wonnangatta, still didn't find anybody here. They had a brief search, stayed overnight, and then went across to Eagle Vale to see Harry Smith, to find out what Harry Smith knew. They stayed the night with Harry Smith, and the next morning the three of them came back here. Yeah, they arrived here later in the afternoon, stayed the night, and then began a search the following morning.
So they conducted their own search of the area. So like, how long were they here before police were actually brought into the situation?
They arrived late in the afternoon, so the next morning they started their search proper, and they done riding along the Conglomerate Creek here, along the bank, and saw a red blanket sticking out of the sand. They rode up to have a closer look, and there was a skull. Looking at them, it seemed to be sitting on the sand. They got closer, had a look. Harry Smith moved the skull with a stick to see if there was any sign of wounds on the skull. One of them came back, we're not sure who, to grab a shovel, and they uncovered under the skull and found Jim Barclay's body.
So do you think he would have been buried like that, or it's been sort of dug up and upturned?
Oh, it's definitely been dug up, yes. Instead of covering it with rocks or anything to protect it from animals, the skull's been dug up and cleaned meat by the animals. They checked underneath, dug away the sand underneath Barclay to see if Bamford was there, buried there as well. And when they found that it was only Barclay in the grave, they recovered him over and put some stones on everything to protect it. Harry Smith went home, and Arthur Phillips and Jack Jebb went back to Mansfield, where Arthur Phillips then notified the police.
Arthur Phillips, the owner of Wonnangatta Station, had notified police that the body of Jim Barclay had been found, and the job had been given out to Detective McKerrell and Constable Higgins to go and retrieve the body. They left Mansfield via Sheepyard Flat, which is about a 3-hour ride, on the Harkwa River, on their way to 8 Mile Hut.
I think a lot of people have criticised Detective McKerrell over the Wonnangatta murders, and that has been because a lot of people doubted his abilities or questioned his results. But when you read his case notes, and when we found out when we wrote the book how much work and how much depth he went into, he was very, very in the early stages of forensic science doing work with ballistics. He really went into this in depth, made every effort to try and document, sort out what had happened. The photographs that he took, people forget there were so many photographs taken at the murder scenes. He did so much work to record the murders, to document the murders, to try and track down where people were. There's a lot more that went into this case, and a lot of people forget too, the Victorian government put a lot of money into this case. McKerrell received rather large amounts of money to travel around trying to follow up every lead relating to this case. I think he did a very good job. I think he was blocked along the way by what we still see today is some people just didn't want to say anything. Even if they didn't know anything, they just wouldn't say anything.
Now, before 4-drive tracks were formed, the only way in and out of this country was through the bridle track. And that track still exists today. It's very narrow, very windy, it's very treacherous, particularly in wet conditions.
Oh, Christ, it's steep. Both sides, there's only probably 40-foot sort of ridge, and there's just 600-700 foot drops on both sides. And the horses are sort of stepping down off rocks and stuff. And I mean, one time we got there and there's just cloud and stuff, and it just opened up, and people thought we were just not going to do it, but we did. It's pretty steep and rugged stuff, and that's the way they brought the body down. So, and we come down that way and all the way down to Hauka, the same way that the old gold mining trails, and it's just high and about this wide. And I get a bit toady when I get down like that anyway. So, yeah.
Just picture this, nearly 100 years ago, Detective McKerrill and the police party rode off the top of Mount Howard, which is behind me, down into Wonnangatta Station where I am at the moment, via the Dry River Creek track. From here they ran on past the homestead, which is still nearly a kilometre down the road, to collect Jim Barclay's body. Now, he'd been dead for nearly 6 weeks by the time he was found. You can just only imagine the police party coming back through here with the corpse. The smell and the stench would have been pretty bad, not to mention the flies that would have been travelling with them.
And when the police party arrived here in Wonnangatta, Harry Smith and Constable Hayes were already here waiting for them. They'd been here 2 days. McKerrill was very keen to see the body, so they went straight down the creek and dug him up, laid him out on the ground, and asked for identification. So Harry Smith got down on one knee and inspected the contents of Barclay's pouch that he carried on his belt, and by the contents, Harry Smith was very confident that it was Jim Barclay, also by the pants he was wearing and the boots that were there. Apparently, then Harry Smith scooped up Barclay's body and wailed, "My friend, my poor friend," and McKerrill indicated to the party, give him a bit of time. And when they came back, he, had his composure back. It was all covered in quite a mess down the front of his shirt. McKerrill then organised canvas to be taken down to the site, and they wrapped the body up and brought it back up and put it in a hut just over here, away from the homestead, because the party was staying in the homestead. And on the way back to Mansfield, up at Mount Howard, they found Thelma, Bamford's horse, was running loose with a mob of horses up there. McKerrill caught the horse and they took it back with them to Mansfield.